Service this today speaks to me at this current time. It assumes neither your belief or your disbelief. Since a young child, I have felt a strong sense of the presence of the Divine Spirit in my life. This sense will, I'm sure, remain mysterious, like approaching a cloud of unknowing. This service is given without judgment, and whatever you believe, you're welcome here. Throughout history, humans have reported encounters with the divine that transcends ordinary daily experience. These random God sightings, often wrapped in mystery and awe, provide glimpses into a world beyond the tangible, evoking a sense of wonder and a spiritual reflection. Humankind's search for God has been long and winding, with the vast majority of our ancestors questioning for meaning through the search. This search goes on, including this morning. So we're here to search, to consider, and so we'll light our chalice, which is you have to imagine with these chalices that we're sitting in some cave in a remote part, or lighting a beacon that's going to light up the hill. So when I light it, there goes the light. It's one impressive though, isn't it, for a battery one? But still, it's a light shining. Yesterday, our distant ancestors gathered around the flame to share their stories and find comfort. Tomorrow, our descendants will gather around the flame, talking of the life that we will never know. But today, it is we who are gathered here around this flame, seeking, believing, and being together. So let us begin together. We should start off with a reading that captures what I want to say today about random God sightings. This service is all about those times in our lives when something strange happens, something passes by, something we cannot really put a handle to. Some call it God, some call it just something going on in our brain, whatever it is, but it's extraordinary. And just for a fleeting moment, it's that moment of flash of inspiration that seems to send us on our way and keep us going, keep us moving forward. And this is age-old, this idea. And I chose from the first reading to read from the Upanishads. You may not know what the Upanishads is, or you may. The Upanishads were written in Hindu writings, really, before the Common Era, so about 2,200 years ago. So what I'm going to read from is a poem that was written roughly about that period of time, 2,200 years ago. And see what it really gels with you, and speaks to your condition about these matters that we're discussing. This is what the Upanishad, and this is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishads, and that's now I've got that out of the way, the Shvetashvatara, I can relax a bit. Quite a mouthful, but anyway. May the Lord of Love, who projects himself, I'm sorry, it's in the masculine pronoun here because of the time, so I hope you'll forgive the gender, the lack of inclusion. May the Lord of Love, who projects himself into this universe of myriad forms, from whom all beings come and whom all return, may he grant us the grace of wisdom. He is fire and the sun and the moon and the stars. He is the air and the sea and the creator, Prajapati. Here's this boy. Here's that girl. Here's that man. Here's that woman. Here's this old man, too, tottering on his staff. His face is everywhere. He's the bluebird, he is the green bird, with red eyes, he is the thundercloud, he is the seasons and the seas. They have no beginning, no end. He is the source from whom the world evolved. From this divine power comes forth all this magical show of name and form, of you and me, which casts the spells of pain and pleasure. Only when we pierce through this magic veil do we see the one who appears as many. Two birds of beautiful plumage, comrades, inseparable, live on the self-same tree. One bird eats the fruit of pleasure and pain. The other looks on without eating. Forgetting our divine origin, we become ensnared in the world of change and bewail our helplessness. But when we see the Lord of love in all his glory, adored by all, we go beyond sorrow. What use are the scriptures to anyone who knows not the one source from whom they come, in whom all gods and worlds abide? Only those who realize him as ever present within the heart, attaining abiding joy. The Lord, who is the supreme magician, brings forth out of himself all the scriptures, oblations, sacrifices, spiritual disciplines, past and present, and the whole universe, invisible through the magic of Maya. He remains hidden in the hearts of all. The idea that there might be a God or a divine spirit hidden in our hearts is quite lovely, isn't it? I find that quite, yes, hidden within every one of us as individuals, as humans, and within the creation itself. All of it is this hidden figure. I thought that was really, in talking about random God sightings, that was a good place to start, because that's what we're talking about this morning, sharing together in this.
I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I sounded the words in my head like a litany to match the rhythm of my feet as they struck the pavement. I began to breathe to the rhythm as well, pulling the air into my lungs and filling them for I, and expelling it in a whoosh on hate you. Finally, it was not enough just to think it. I began to say it out loud. I hate you. I hate you. You're not real. You're not it. My God, I can even see the houses behind you. It's true. I was cursing trees. We'd moved from rural Ohio to Houston in Texas in the middle of summer. The community we moved into proudly billed itself as the livable forest. And my husband, who had gone to Houston ahead of us to begin work and arrange for our new home, chose a house in the community because of the trees, hoping I would be pleased. I was not pleased. The trees in the livable forest were not at all like my beloved trees back home in Ohio. In fact, nothing in Houston was like back home. And it was so much more than trees I was cursing. I hated everything about our new life. I had traded small for big, slow for fast, wide open space for neighbours on top of one another. I had exchanged the only white house with black shutters on the street with its large garden for a brick house with a postage stamp sized garden that looked like every other house on the street. So much so that weeks after the move, my children were still calling out from the back seat, "Mum, you just drove past our house again." I had abandoned my beautiful deciduous trees for tall, scrappy pines that never stopped shedding ugly brown needles on my tiny garden. Deeper yet, I had traded my lifetime home, the nearness of my family and dearest friends, for what? So my husband could work a big job in a big city. Feeling perpetually a stranger in a strange land, I quickly forgot that I had agreed to the move, and soon my husband's name began to appear on the list of things I hated. I left my brick house every morning to run on the Greenbelt trails, an old habit from home that I brought with me. Back home in Ohio, I started every day with an early morning walk or run, and as I'd breathe in the fresh morning air, I could get my thoughts in order, plan for my day, and maybe think about God a little. But here, I'd no sooner hit the Greenbelt than my list of hates would appear before me, and the list would consume me until it was all I could think about the entire run. I would look at the trees on either side of the pavements, and I'd think how different they were from the trees at home. Occasionally, I'd pass people, but never the same faces, and I'd think of the people at home I would be passing if I were there. And there was something else. There was something else here that was not the same, and it was the worst of all. It was God. I hadn't seen him since the move. I couldn't understand it. When I met people here, I'd look at their eyes to try and see God twinkling back at me, or watch to see if they would look up unexpectedly and smile that certain way, maybe say something cryptic that was the signal between God and me that it was him. I'd wait to feel the shift and the knowing that it was God, but it just never came. God doesn't live in Texas, I'd remark mournfully to the trees, and I don't blame him. A sorrowful feeling would wash over me, and after a while, I began to doubt that the sightings had ever happened. I stopped chanting my litany as I spotted a small girl and her grandfather up ahead of me. The grandfather was tall and broad-shouldered. I could see he looked quite fit for a grandfather. The little girl at his side wore pigtails placed high on her head, but falling past her shoulders. She wore glasses, despite her young age, and the lenses were very thick. They magnified her dark eyes that peeped up at me as I trudged by. As she looked up at me like that, all pigtails and huge eyes and pink cheeks, I thought dully that there was a time when a girl like that, with eyes like that, would melt my heart, but not today. I forced a smile and a curt nod. It was all I could manage. I plodded on for some seconds, then I heard a soft, shuffling noise. I glanced back over my shoulder to discover that the little girl was running behind me. I smiled in spite of myself. "Hi, honey," I ventured, slowing my stride just a bit. The girl simply smiled and took her place at my side. A few seconds passed and I expected her to stop or her grandfather to call her back, but the girl doggedly kept running. I felt inexplicably moved by the child who held her position at my side, yet my sense of homesickness and sorrow felt strangely magnified and overwhelming, and I found myself unable to speak to her. "I'd like to run," she remarked finally. "Speak to her, damn it," I ordered myself sternly. "Well, that's just great," I responded after an awkward pause. "Running is good for you." She nodded her assent. Then I noticed that her shoelace had come undone. My mother's impulse responded straight away. "Oh, honey," I said, stopping, "your shoe's untied. May I tie it for you?" She stopped and stuck her foot out. "Yes." I crouched down at her feet and glanced at her little pink face. Her eyes readily met mine again. Her grandfather joined us. "Shoe untied again?" he asked, laughing. "Well, she's just letting me feel good," I responded, looking up into her dark eyes, carefully watching me. "Letting me help a little," I smiled and said. "My little girl is older now, and I don't get to tie her shoes anymore. Sometimes I miss that." The girl continued to watch me, her hand resting on my shoulder as I tied a double knot. There was something about her hand, resting there, the way she was watching my face. A feeling of being near something familiar washed over me. "I guess she reminds me of Molly," I thought, thinking of my own young daughter. I stood up and prepared for our goodbyes. "There you go," I said brightly to the girl, and then, "Have a good one," to the grandfather. But to my surprise, after I had resumed my run for a short distance, I again hear the soft shuffle, shuffle. I turned to see her behind me, and I laughed this time and slowed all the way down to her pace. "It's nice to have you with me," I offered. We ran, she and I, until I began to wonder why her grandfather had not called out for her to stop. Looking back, I was to receive my second surprise. There he was, running himself, moving slow and steady, maintaining a respectful distance, allowing the girl and me to run together. He looked comfortable as he jogged, and he was doing it for her, for me, for us. Touched by his act, I continued on, and for a while I felt as if time was standing still. We ran slowly, the girl and I, as if we had all the time in the world. We did not speak, but sometimes I would turn my head to smile down at her, only to find her smiling back up at me. As we approached a section of the green belt that opened onto a busy street, my mother's reflex surfaced again, and I explained to the little girl, "We'll have to stop at the street. Your grandpa wouldn't want you to cross that with me." "I know," she said simply. "Thank you for running with me," I said, as we waited for grandfather to cover the small distance he had kept so respectfully between us. "Yes," she answered. "Thank you too," I said to the grandfather. He smiled and raised his hand in farewell, and she did too, and I crossed the road, stepped back onto the green belt, and promptly began to cry. I wasn't even sure why I was crying. I simply knew that I had been touched by their presence. "God, God, was that you?" I asked, wondering. And then it was fully upon me, and I couldn't believe I'd missed it. After all those long, lonely weeks, the knowing was upon me again. It all flooded over me. The girl, her willing company, her probing gaze, God, grandfather's respectful distance, his willingness to let the little girl accompany me. God, how had I not seen it? I allowed it to wash over me. I allowed myself to think it for a while as I walked slowly along the green belt, until finally I sighed, "Oh God, imagine you coming to me here in this place, where I have screamed my hate at you every day for all these weeks." The soft and gentle feeling of God's presence was lingering around me still, even though the girl and the grandfather were long gone. Musing about this, I absently raised my eyes up to the tall pine trees around me and to the blue sky behind me. And I realized suddenly that God wasn't just the girl or the grandfather. God was the green belt, And the green belt had let me pass through it every day and spew my hate and my homesickness and all my sorrow over it, and in exchange had simply been lovingly present. And just as I was beginning to feel that my hate was going to consume me, God made things a little more personal. He sent a pink-cheeked little girl and her handsome grandfather to run with me, to interrupt my hating just long enough to notice him. And now that I had stopped hating, I did notice him, right here on the green belt. I looked at the trees and the vines and palms that were either side of me now with sudden affection and gratitude. I looked farther up to the small thatches of needles and pine cones at the very tops of the trees. I could almost feel the trees loving me back. Feel God loving me back. I visit the green belt as often as I can now. The green belt in the livable forest with its pine trees, shade trees, wildflowers, its rabbits, lizards, squirrels, and sometimes deer. I hold Ohio in my heart, but there is room for Houston now too. It's beautiful. I'm not sure how I missed it all before.
Yeah, such a beautiful story. It reminded me this morning, as well, last night when we arrived at the hotel we're staying in, which is functional, isn't it? I think that's what we call this hotel. Present but functional. It's a functional hotel. It's almost in some respects, corporate. And what brightened it up was a little girl in the foyer. And there was clearly some sort of gymnastic competition going on in Newcastle. It was full of little girls, actually, lots and lots of them. And this little girl was practicing her cartwheels in the foyer, quite a big foyer, as you appreciate. And it was the movement that she had, it was so perfect. Doing it effortlessly across the foyer. And it was the joy that she was expressing in her face, and it's very similar to what we've just read, which is catching God sighting, I think, yeah. It's not such a corporate environment, cold environment. Here is, just this, the sense of the divine spirit, which is not very nice. Right. Sometimes we have to be cracked open a little bit to actually see what we're talking about here this morning. That's my view. You may have a different view. You might want to share that view with me afterwards. Because there is no perfect offering among the Unitarians, we're here to say, well, I don't think it's that way, or I agree with that. And it's good that we are open and inclusive and accepting of all different viewpoints and all different expressions of God or no God. And we can do that. Wonderful. The next reading comes from the early part of the 20th century. And it's by a poet, Rabindranath Tagore, who is one of my favorites. And it comes from his collection of, which was entitled Gitanjali, Song of Songs. And in these works, he wrote down what he was feeling. He was a relatively young man, actually. It's quite interesting. He was quite a young man at the time, 1913. He got and this was so revolutionary in Europe in particular, that he got the Nobel Prize for Literature. First non-European person to get it, but for this writing. And I wonder whether you can see this in this little verse, the little verse, just verse from Gitanjali, number 49. Just try and picture the words. You came down from your throne and stood at my cottage door. I was singing all alone in a corner, and the melody caught your ear. You came down and stood at my cottage door. Masters are many in your halls, and songs are sung there all hours. But the simple chord of this novice struck your love. One plaintive little strain mingled with the great music of the world, and with a flower for a prize, you came down and stopped at my cottage door. I think I need a little explanation, that one, but it's just the beauty of whatever we see as the grand creator, the divine, coming down and listening to this man's song, sitting in a corner. And that touched his love, her love, their love. Interesting that we may be in close to that divine spirit this morning here amongst us. In fact, anywhere we are, where it might be this morning, you might be lying in bed, doesn't matter. We're close to that divine spirit. A Bible reading about a still small voice. This is Elijah the prophet. And he's pretty fed up, more than pretty fed up. He's had enough. His life is tough. The news is not good. Everywhere around, all he can see is ruin, destruction. Do you recognise it? The feeling of helplessness and hopelessness is that it is taken from this reading from 1 Kings 19 and 14. I'm using the Message Bible because it to me it just brings out the extra flavour of the reading. This is what he says. I've been working my heart out for the God of the angel of armies, said Elijah. The people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed the places of worship, and murdered your prophets. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me. And he was told, go and stand on the mountain at attention before God. God will pass by. A hurricane wind ripped through the mountains and shattered the rocks before God. But God wasn't to be found in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But God wasn't in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. God wasn't in the fire. And after fire, gentle, quiet whisper. When Elijah heard the quiet voice, he muffled his face with his great cloak and went to the mouth of the cave and stood there. A quiet voice asked, so Elijah, now tell me, what are you doing here? Elijah said it again. I've been working my heart out for the God of the angel of armies, because the people of Israel have abandoned your covenant, destroyed your places of worship, and murdered your prophets. I'm the only one left. Now they're trying to kill me. He was soon to find out he was wrong, and God was teaching him a lesson. Ever felt that way? Why am I doing this? Why am I going to Unitarian service? There's only going to be over half a dozen of us around there. You're not going to be many of us. Is it worth it? What are we doing it for? No, you can feel what Elijah's saying here. Pointless. And God's saying, I'll give you the theatre, and then I'll give you the message. And the theatre was big bangs, big blows, and wind and fire and earthquakes. None of it was where God was. And then this quiet whisper. Just a minute. What are you doing here? Why are you doing it? Why are you at Unitarians this morning? What are you doing? Yes. It's not what it appears. So I can't do the earthquake, wind and flower this morning. I can't do it. I haven't got a voice for it. but I've got the voice for the whisper. Just this loveliness, just this gentle reminder. Small, quiet, gentle voice. Let's take some time for meditation, reflection, and prayer, can we? We can just draw our breath in and out slowly and relax, get comfortable in our chairs. Just ponder on the things that we've been discussing. What they might mean for us. And if we feel it's right, can we form words to speak to the Divine Spirit, God, Goddess? In our hearts, can we warm like the woman on the Greenway? Can we be warmed from a cold heart to a warm, receptive heart? Can we be in the place, that crack, where the light gets in? We ask that Divine Spirit for compassion for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, for people in Newcastle, for people in the world. We ask for compassion for those who are suffering in places of warfare this morning, those that don't have enough to eat, those that live in atrocious, dirty, unsanitary positions in the world, housing that is not even fit to be called housing. And we show our compassion in our hearts for all those people. And we also ask that we might be seekers, that we might not stop seeking through discouragement. We might find a way forward as a small Unitarian congregation, as individuals. May we be conscious it's just possible the divine God, you, Spirit of love, might show us favour today and listen to our beautiful, simple songs of love. Amen, and so let it be. We're starting to see it, even though we can't quite feel it. The trees are all in greening now, and the daffodils are coming up, and you've got some lovely flowers maybe in your garden at home or just around. When you go around the city, you start to see that life is coming back to life, isn't it? And that warms our hearts a little bit. There is a lady of the turning season that is actually benevolent and looking after us and caring for us. And a little bit of an address, a very short one, really. What the mystics knew in times of crisis. So what we're talking about is a form of mysticism we've been talking about this morning and reflecting on. It is a coming together of the more quiet that we can find, the more opportunities we can find, that really will come to that crack where the light gets in. And it's that the mystics found in times of crisis. And you might be able to think of some of the great mystics of the past who really passed a message on to us that would seem incredible if we look back at the times that they lived in. Let's take Julian of Norwich, for example. You may be familiar with Julian of Norwich. She was an anchoress. She lived alone at the side of the cathedral in Norwich, and she wrote the most remarkable things. She said, all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. And yet it's quite possible and quite probable that she was an anchoress because the whole of her family had been wiped out by the Black Death. It was everywhere. Large numbers of people were dying in the streets or at home in that time. A true epidemic. I know we've come through COVID, but COVID was nothing compared to what some of these plagues were in the past, when it wiped out vast proportions of the population. So Julian of Norwich, she is talking about all manner of things will be well and will be well. This, and she talks about this little nugget, this little seed that is what she holds on to. And in hope. So where did she find that hope? Where do we find the hope when things are dark and we look switch on the news, or we switch off the news thinking, oh, I can't go through that again. It's all crazy business, isn't it? And it looks very dark, but it isn't the first time that people have done that. And so the words of Julian of Norwich during that period of excruciating pain, and sadness and loss, and during that period of time, there were many soothsayers who were saying this is the end of the world, as we always get it now. It's the worst of worst, and it's going to. Well, we live in very, very difficult times, and I'm not in any way trying to minimise the harm and the destruction that's going on in the world today, because we can't, can we? It's so there in our faces. But these ones in the past who have been through that period, like Julian of Norwich, were able to find something beyond themselves, because you might say it was within themselves. It's something Julian of Norwich found, and that might be, might be your take on the matter, or you might say that she actually found God in the circumstances. And it's a bit like Elijah. She must have felt some mornings that she was absolutely at the end of the tether. And yet to write those beautiful words that all manner of things will be well. Not might be well, but will be well. She found something in courage and some succor in those words. Hildegard of Bingen was another one. And another one which I'm familiar with, coming from a Quaker background, is George Fox. George Fox was an interesting person, started the Quakers, was renowned to be one of the formers of the Quaker movement in the 1640s, late 40s and 1650s. And George Fox lived in the time of the civilization at that time, in the midst of all of this. Be still and cool in thine own mind and spirit from thy own thoughts. And then will thou feel the principle of God to turn thy mind to the Lord God, whereby thou wilt receive his strength and power from whence life came, to allay all the tempests against blusterings and storms. Be still, cool your own mind and spirit from your own thoughts. And I hear those words echoing. How do we manage to be still and to find that place of serenity when all around us is apparently going mad? It's difficult to do, but it's doable, as these mystics throughout time have proven that it's possible to do it, and we can do it today, and that there is hope, and there's always things. Because for me, I'm not speaking personally, that this divine spirit is benevolent, and that the arc of justice was working its way around. It takes a long time, but it is happening. But for a God that the Bible says that 1,000 years is but one day, living outside the time frames that we live in, 60, 70, 80 years, 90, we're fortunate. That seems everything has to be done in a hurry. But a God of benevolence can work out things over the long term, and can see that how it's going to work out, even though we think it's getting worse and worse and worse. And maybe it does have to get worse before it gets better. Who knows? I'm not a prophet. I have no idea, no more idea than you know. But a person who has faith, and the Bible says that faith is the assured expectation of realities, though not yet beheld. The expectation of realities, though not yet beheld. In other words, a person of faith, person who finds that crack, finds where the light comes in, finds something special that might just be the thing that would give us all individually that hope and that courage, not only to carry on, but to actually say, we can make the most of this situation. Yeah. So next time I come to Newcastle, I expect to see a room full. Is that misplaced optimism? No, it could be, couldn't it? You know, speaking to taxi drivers when we coming from the hotel, sounds like we were living the life of thing. But it was raining. We thought, well, we weren't sure of the way, so we got a taxi. Chat with a taxi driver, and the taxi driver said, "Where are you going this morning?" He said, "We're going to the Unitarian service." "What's that?" He said, "Never heard of Unitarians." And he just had to tell. He said, so we said, Unitarians are a group of people coming from basically originally a Christian type background, but now open to all influences and all ways. And I'm running out of time, so I won't. But it's just thought that there was, and the conversation went this way. He said, "Well, that's interesting. I might look into that." It was indicated, well, maybe there might be something there for me. And there's lots of other people like that in Newcastle. Random God sightings, from ancient myths to modern miracles, highlight the enduring human desire to connect with the divine. These mystical encounters offer glimpses into a reality beyond the ordinary, sparkling wonder and reflection of nature's existence. Whether through historical accounts, personal stories, or the beauty of the natural world, the divine continues to make its presence felt in unexpected and awe-inspiring ways. In these perplexing and difficult times, may we be comforted in knowing we are not alone. Whether we believe in a personal God or not, let us cherish our association together.